My name is Judi Wakhungu, and I run the African Center for Technology Studies. ACTS, as we are known, is a science and technology think tank that's based in Nairobi, Kenya. We do work throughout Africa, and we have a number of themes that we work with. The first one is agriculture and food security. The second is energy and water security. And we also work on biodiversity and natural resource management. What we do is we advise African governments and international bodies on science and technology for development. I think there are still many challenges facing the deployment of renewable energies in Africa for many reasons. Although the status of the innovations and inventions in renewable energy has really improved, the uptake has been frustrated by a variety of reasons. First of all, in terms of just the policies themselves. In many African countries, the policies for dissemination of renewable energy technology is still quite draconian. And so it's not seen, for example, by the banks as an attractive investment. But this is changing, and it's changing in many countries, South Africa, Kenya, and I would say that the Mediterranean North African countries such as Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, and even Egypt have made tremendous progress. When it comes to the quality assurance of renewable energy technologies, we've also had some challenges. In other words, that some technologies have been disseminated, but their performance has been very poor, and this has deterred many potential investors. Another challenge that we face is that African governments themselves, although they are developing policies that are friendly to renewable energy, implementation of these policies has been extremely difficult. But like I said, the situation is improving. This has meant that many of the renewable energy technology projects have been disseminated by NGOs and other non-profit organizations. The difficulty with this is that these have been project-based. So we've not been able to have consistency in the dissemination of these technologies, because once the project ends, then the communities are not able to continue. There are some technologies that I think that are very exciting, and many are to do with actually just lighting and providing light, particularly in the rural areas. And these are off-grid, possibilities. For example, solar-powered lamps and batteries that allow children, for example, to be able to study at night without contaminating the environment the way the kerosene lamps do. And I think also that some of the fuel-based cook stoves promoted by the Global Alliance for Clean Energy Initiative, for example, have also got a lot of potential. We just need a partnership between our governments and the private sector and international organizations for this to continue. You see, now finding fuel, and in this case particularly fuel wood for cooking, is the purview of women and girls. And in many parts of Africa, they spend almost 20 hours a week, if not more, actually trying to look for the fuel wood. And it's getting more and more dangerous, which means that they have to get further and further away from home, where there's insecurity. And so looking at initiatives such as cleaner, greener cook stoves, particularly designed with women in mind, and hopefully designed with the women together, is definitely going to improve their lives. And as I've mentioned before, there are very many new technologies out there. What I would like to see our governments do, and in partnership with the private sector, is to take initiative and work more closely with women in their communities to ensure that many of the materials are locally sourced, to provide capacity building, for maintenance, and then also to examine the value chains for the dissemination of these stoves so that this time they succeed. As you know very well, since the 70s, there have been efforts to disseminate cook stoves, and they have not succeeded. But now, with initiatives such as Project Gaia, which is looking at biofuel, looking at using local feedstocks, designing these with women in mind, keeping the technologies very simple, I think has a lot of potential for improving women and girls' lives. The biggest challenge for the AU is to be able to coordinate all of the other ongoing efforts so that we do not have policy disaggregation. As the largest policy organ in the continent, I think it needs to be much more proactive and to show leadership. So, for instance, not many people have seen the penetration of renewable energy because of the position that the African Union has taken. But there are many other regional economic communities, for instance, NEPAD, which is a project of the AU, CADAP, which looks at agricultural advancement in Africa, SADC, which is the Southern African Development Community, and ECOWAS for West Africa, and the EAC for East Africa. All of these have positions, papers, and targets for meeting renewable energy, many of them stating that they want to meet the 20% by a certain period, say by 2020 or 2030. I think the position for the AU is really to take leadership and make sure that these mandates are met not only at the regional level, but also at national level. So it's to take leadership. I think one has to do the life cycle analysis of each technology per se. Some may be purporting to be green, but if you look at how they are manufactured, then they are definitely not green. But others are, and standards are being developed. And so I would look towards organizations like the ISO that are developing standards to determine what is green. There are other organizations, for instance, the World Bioenergy Organization, that is also developing standards to measure what is green. And it's on the basis of these expertise that we will be able to determine whether a product is green or not. And again, it's up to us, the practitioners, to be able to determine on that basis. For instance, already with renewable energy technology dissemination in Africa, as I mentioned earlier, there have been a lot of failures. Failures because the technologies themselves may not be green, the quality assurance is questionable. I think the reality is that we have to keep posing these questions to try to determine what is clean. This is also a tough question, and different countries are at different levels. When trying to answer this question, it's important for me not to address Africa as a monolithic situation. It's very important to go on a case-by-case basis and on a country-by-country basis. Land is not equal in Africa. There are some countries that say they have a lot of land, whereas with some countries, land is very limited. The land tenure regimes are different for all countries. So of course you've read about the cases such as Ethiopia, Tanzania. These are very famous cases of where part of the country's development strategy has been to lease land to European countries, part of the land grab. This has yielded mixed results, and many of them have been reported as being negative because the communities are marginalized. Some other countries don't have the land to lease. For example, the smaller countries such as Rwanda. Therefore, they have taken different measures. I do think that many European countries are still interested in leasing land in Africa. Germany, for instance, has indicated that it is, and has already had some negative experiences in Ethiopia, for example. I do think that the onus is on our leadership to take a more critical role to assess how communities are going to benefit from these particular relationships. But it's important not to generalize. It's important to take this on a case-by-case basis.